Hello, and welcome to the third video. My first two videos were on movies, top 10 erotic thrillers and top 10 underrated slashers. In this video I'll be presenting my top 10 favorite punk rock albums. I'd like to continue posting both music and movie related content on this channel. I sort of grew up on punk rock and horror movies, and my hope is that many of you out there share those same interests. So without further delay, let's get into the top 10 punk rock albums. And I actually have an honorable mention here. And so I just want to mention, if you can see that, AFI, All Hallows EP. So this is an EP, it's not a full-length album. There's only 4 songs, but in my opinion, they're AFI's best 4 songs. And it's really high-energy punk rock. If you like high-energy music, then you should check that EP out. Okay, number 10. We've got Link80, 17 Reasons. This is really great hardcore mixed with ska, and there's brass instruments in there as well. Sort of a tragic backstory with the lead singer. I believe his name was Nick Trina. He died very young, and he was actually in another band called Knowledge, and I'm going to hold their album up as well. So different band but same singer. The album's called A Gift Before I Go, but both of these albums are really great. You should check them out. Alright, number 9. We've got Tiger Army, their first album, self-titled. This is psychobilly. If you're not familiar with psychobilly, it's rockabilly music mixed with punk rock. In my opinion, this is psychobilly at its finest. I believe this came out in 1999. I seen this band live at Warped Tour. It might have been 2003, 2004. Their second album, The Power of Moonlight, was good. But after their second album, I wasn't too into what they were doing. But this is a great album right here. Alright, number 8. We're bringing it back to the early 80s. It's Agent Orange, Living in Darkness. This is really interesting music. There's a lot of surf influence in this, like Dick Dale surf music, but it's certainly a punk rock album, but it's one of the only punk albums that I've heard that mixes surf music in there, so it's pretty interesting. You should check it out. Number 7. Keeping it with the early 80s, that's Social Distortion, Mommy's Little Monster. This is a really good, just straight up punk rock album. I also seen this band live. It might have been 2007, and of course by that time Mike Ness was the only original member. This is actually the only Social D album that I like. After this album, they sort of started incorporating country and western influence, and I wasn't too into that. But this is most certainly a punk rock album, and it's very good. I think we're on number 6. We've got Against Me, As the Eternal Cowboy. I bought this album almost immediately after it came out. I was riding in a car with some friends and they put this album on, and I immediately liked the music. The intensity of the singer, and I actually think the drummer in this band is highly underrated. I seen this band live twice. Both times it was in Minneapolis, quite soon after this record came out. I had a hard time deciding if I was going to include this album or Reinventing Axl Rose, but I just thought that this one was just a little bit better. But that first album, Axl Rose, is pretty good too. Okay, number 5. We've got Misfits, Collection 2. So it's not a studio album, it's a collection, but their studio albums are so short, so I had to pick a collection. This was the first Misfits album I got, and so it's sort of nostalgic to me. I love the Misfits because they mix horror with punk rock, and those are my 2 favorite things. You know, when the Misfits reformed in the 90s with Graves, that music was okay. When Jerry Only went solo, I wasn't too into that, but the classic Danzig era Misfits that's some of my favorite music right there. On to number 4 already. We've got Anti-Flag, Underground Network. I had a difficult time choosing between this album and Mobilize. I think this one just It's a little bit better than Mobilize because I think it's heavier and it's a little bit more angry. I've seen this band live twice, once at Warped Tour and another time at First Ave in Minneapolis. I was really into this band when I was in high school. Their first album, Die for the Government, A New Kind of Army, Their System Doesn't Work for You, Mobilize, The Terror State. After about 2008 or 9, I sort of switched from being a part of the punk scene to the heavy metal scene, and so I haven't been keeping up with punk rock in the past 15 years maybe, but I know Anti-Flag's been releasing new albums since then. I'm sure they're good, but this album is my favorite. Alright, number 3. Leftover Crack, Mediocre Generica. This is a rowdy bunch right here. I love this album because, I love this band because they mix heavy metal with punk. You can most definitely hear the heavy metal influence. And there's so much intensity. And again, I had a hard time choosing between this album and Fuck World Trade. And also that, the Choking Victim album was real good too, even though it was technically a different band. I know, and they've released a new album within the past 10 years, but I haven't heard it. I'm sure it's good. But I love this album. Crack City Rockers, The Good, The Bad, The Leftover Crack, Born to Die. That is some good music. This band has this really interesting duality to them where they have this very beautiful sound, and at the same time it's very ugly, and they just mix the beauty and ugliness together. And I just love it. Alright, we're already at number 2. We've got Rancid and Out Come the Wolves. I've actually been listening to this album a lot, in the past 2 weeks. Especially the song The 11th Hour. I love that song. This album is a real masterpiece. I also like Let's Go and Life Won't Wait, but this album from beginning to end it's so amazing. Tim Armstrong is a real talented musician. I also liked the Transplants a lot too. But I've been listening to this album for probably more than 20 years now, and it never gets old to me. Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. Number 1. We've got Operation Ivy, Energy. I think this was the first underground punk record that I bought. Before I got into punk, I was listening to grunge and pop punk. And I think the way I found out about Operation Ivy is because I was listening to Green Day, and they do a cover of an Operation Ivy song. It's called Knowledge. And I think that's how I found this band. And I bought this album, more than 20 years ago, which is making me feel old. But I immediately fell in love with this album. It's so high energy and it's so fun. And the lyrics are very intelligent. Jesse Michaels he's a poet, and the lyrics are very relatable for me. The first band that I started when I was in high school was basically an Operation Ivy ripoff. We would just copy their songs basically. But this album had a really big impact on my life. It sort of changed my life. It introduced me to underground punk, and I still love it to this day. Alright, well, there you have it, my top 10 favorite punk rock albums. I'd love to hear what your top 10 favorite are in the comments below. I think my next video, I'm probably going to make another one on movies, and then after that I'll probably do a top 10 favorite heavy metal albums. So, until next time.